Hello and welcome to 2020 Summer Reading Planning webinar presented by Vermont Department of Libraries, presented by me, Jonathan Clark, and Jennifer Johnson.
Hello.
And we are going to be discussing sort of an overview of ideas around summer programming for 2020. There are a lot of changes, a lot of things that are up in the air this year. So we're going to talk through a lot of these things. We are re-recording this webinar because there were some technical issues in the recording when we originally did the webinar, but we wanted to share out this information with those who are not able to attend. We are going to be going through all of that, but we do not have an audience with us today. But we're going to go through all of the information that we have prepared for you. So we are going to be talking about service and programming in uncertain times as sort of a precursor to talking about summer reading specifically, and then summer reading goals, summer programming, partnerships, and then evaluation and reporting. So again, before we get into the specifics of summer reading, it is important to address the challenging time that we are in and the uncertain times that we're in, and to know that there is a lot going on for everyone. And I know that I feel like this dog, that there's constantly updates every morning, is sort of a race to catch up on what's happening in the news and to catch up on what's the same and what is different as far as libraries go and just in the world in general. And that's important to recognize that that's true for individuals and for organizations, and for those that libraries serve as well. And along the same lines, that a lot of people have been throwing on this phrase, the new normal, as libraries are closed right now, and we're people are thinking about reopening, thinking about virtual programming, thinking about all of these things going forward, that whatever happens in the future, whatever programming, whatever library service looks like, is not going to be the same as what it has been. And there are a lot of unknown factors, but whatever we are figuring out right now, things that we're able to work through and to come to cool programming ideas and all that stuff, that hopefully we can think about what works now as also thinking about into the future, because everything that's happening is new to all of us, to everyone. And also it's important not to compare, because you might see that there's a particular library, a particular person that's doing something really cool, and you might feel that you're not able to do that for various reasons, if the library with staffing or just life, just having to homeschool and take care of everything that's happening. So it's important to not compare yourself to other people or to other organizations, but to really be thoughtful about where you're at and to move forward from there. So thinking about, within the context of all that, having stepped back a little bit, then to really think about setting goals for summer reading, which is something that probably do every year as we're starting to think about summer reading. Usually it's much earlier than this, of course, and a lot of things, a lot of planning has already happened, but at this point there's some reevaluation that will be happening within the context of what's going on right now. And so again, this is a good way to think about it as we're thinking about goal setting and serving the communities is to have to think about how we can best meet the needs of families this summer. And this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which really sort of lays out the basic needs of people and sort of builds that it has to be certain things in place before they can get to the next level, essentially. And as you can see on the bottom is the physiological needs, the really basic things of water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing. You know, those are all things that are, a lot of those are up in the air for a lot of people right now. So it's important to keep in mind that, you know, if those aren't in place, then it's hard to then think about things like programming and thinking about like reading and the ascent and of you know, all of the things that come with that and the services of the library if their basic needs are being met. So it's important to start there to think about how we can best serve the communities and to be involved in anything that is happening to meet those basic needs. And that is really, that's very important. If you're able to meet those, help be a part of that, then, you know, you might be able to start to think about, or if your community has some of that in place, you can start to think about, you know, more of the higher levels of self-actualization and those sort of things that are usually a lot of where programming and stuff and things come in. So again, you can think about how you can best meet the needs of families this summer. Trying to bring a sense of normalcy is really important. A lot of things are up in the air, and especially for young people, consistency is really important. So just to have a friendly face to say the library is here, we're all experiencing this together, and we're you know, here for you. And then again, to be able to meet their physiological needs, share relatable content, engage with young people and activities that enhance their self-esteem and knowledge of the world. And there are ways to do that even in these challenging times. So the goals for summer reading, these are the CSLP examples. They are empower people of all ages to have a positive attitude about reading, foster cooperation between community and groups, promote library services and resources. So again, these are very broad sort of goals, and they are a good place to start. And there are ways that I think that all of these can be addressed, even if it looks very different than it has in years past. Okay, so goals for summer reading for 2020. Again, build around your community needs. What does your community need right now? What are they going to need in the near future in a couple of months? What are they going to need in a year from now? And a lot of these are things that we don't know exactly, but it's a good place to start to think about it. And then also just the capacity of you and your organization. Again, unfortunately, we know that there are, you know, libraries that are understaffed, staff that has been furloughed, and so there are things that, you know, those basic things are not in place, then it makes it really difficult to even think about something like summer reading. And then, of course, to also think about how the summer reading, in whatever form it looks like this year, is accessible, inclusive, accommodating for everybody, including, you know, those with learning, visual, hearing impairments, and to always, again, that is always something that we should be thinking about in developing programs and serving their community. And so along those lines is also planning for equity of access. As a lot of things move to virtual programming, it's important to think about some of these questions, like how can you allow for some participation without internet access? There's a lot of great virtual programs, but there, of course, are people who don't have internet access. So to think about how to connect with those who don't have it, and then also, you know, even if they do, they may have low bandwidth options or low bandwidth, where it's, you know, there's a lot of stories of right now people are encountering, you know, everyone's at home. There are people who are doing their schoolwork. There are people, you know, working and all of these things and trying to stream videos, and then somebody is like kicked off Zoom call because, you know, their kid is watching a video. So, you know, those are also important, you know, to think about. And then, you know, there's also a lot of promotion and everything that happens with social media, but we know that not everyone uses social media to also think about ways to engage with that. And we will talk about some creative ways to address all of these in a little bit. And then, of course, just addressing engaging with all ages. You know, summer reading is geared to children and teens. But of course, it's always important to involve families, but even more than normal, as people are home, it's really important to think about, you know, how families as a whole can be involved in summer reading. And again, and during these unknown times, and as you know, unfortunately, a lot of things that, and we've heard from a lot of people, plans that were put in place are kind of going out the window for summer programming this year. Unfortunately, a lot of course, like the in-person programming. And there's, again, a lot of unknown things. So here's just some considerations, because no matter what, summer reading is not going to look the same this year. But whatever you were able to do, it's okay. And that's important to remember. And again, not to compare to what other libraries are doing, but really just like whatever, you know, the capacity of your organization and the needs of your community. So some considerations could be shortening the program. Instead of the entire summer, it could be, you know, 4 to 8 weeks, even shorter than that, depending on what works. And then also just delaying it, you know, if you're, because there are so many unknowns now, maybe you could say we're going to push it back, and then it will also give you time to sort of do some of this planning and you know, changing the way that summer reading might look and adapting to the current situation if you push it back a little bit. And you know, and then also to really focus is knowing that you may not be able to have activities in the physical library space like you normally do, to really focus on community, school and community partnerships, and how you can work within those existing partnerships and within those connections that are already established, which we'll talk about later. And then also there, you know, just a consideration of like maybe your library just doesn't have the capacity to even do summer reading this year, and that is okay too, because these are very difficult times, and so that's absolutely a possibility. But you know, I think that there are some really simple things to do, and it's a good chance to sort of like think about ways to simplify it. Sometimes summer reading gets too complicated in general, and there's too many moving pieces, and to really think about those important, like, what are the real takeaways? What is the really important thing from summer reading? And if that is community and that is reading, that's doable. And that's something that we can promote and make happen, but it's just going to look differently. Okay, so programming. We're going to go over a bunch of programming ideas, but just so you know, we are not going to get in depth on anything. These are really just to like go through a bunch of broad categories, and then we will provide some resources and so that you can, you know, dig into any of these ideas more. But we're not going to get into depth on any of these for this presentation. So for registration and tracking for summer reading, there of course are online platforms, and we're going to talk about that a bit later. And then paper registration, like a lot of people have done before. There's also the idea of phone registration, which is probably not something you normally do, but is also an option, or some combination of all of these. And then there's also the idea of, like, again, maybe this year there's no registration for summer reading, and there's, you know, then to reevaluate for next year, and that's absolutely fine. So again, as I mentioned, specifically for the tracking platform, we know that there are libraries who have contracted for a online reading and tracking program, but the Vermont Department of Libraries are really excited that we are currently in the process of contracting with a platform that we are going to be able to offer to every single library in the state. And we can't talk too much about it right now because we're still in the midst of the process, but it will be happening, and there will be more information coming soon about and training coming for all of that. And again, a big reason, why now? It's because a lot of people have been asking if the Department of Libraries was able to offer something like this, and we looked at the option, and we were happy that we were able to find the funds for it and to make this happen for this year. Our contract is going to be for 2 years, so at least for 2 years. So that is also great to think about, that even if you don't have the capacity to even sort of think about using something like this for this year, you can think about how you might be able to use it next year going forward. So again, we'll be providing a lot more information about this, hopefully very soon, and providing support and training for the platform. But we are very excited to be able to offer this this year. Okay, so again, as far as programming goes, a lot of the focus has been on virtual programming, and there's a ton of amazing virtual programs. A lot of you have shared them. There's so much out there. So these are just some ideas. Your scavenger hunts, virtual book clubs, nature walks, art and craft tutorials, community service projects, acts of kindness, art writing, video submissions, recipe exchanges, science projects, Lego challenges. The list goes on and on and on. And there's great, again, on our website, we have links to some of these things, and within the actual the PowerPoint that we're going to share out as well, we'll have all of the links for a lot of these things. A lot of
the online story times that libraries have been doing and things like that are on our website. So if you want to see some Vermont homegrown examples, we will share that link out too. People are doing some really awesome stuff. So make sure to check that out.
Yes, they are. Thank you for sharing. I was going to mention that and I forgot. So thank you. And then the other thing is that, and we've already hearing a lot of great things, ideas about that are sort of these more sort of old school ideas too, that aren't virtual, that are, again, and then it's also addressing that issue of equity for those who don't have internet access, or thinking about ways of going old school, using mail, postcards, which could include like a summer reading registration, or it could be used as more of like just to keep in contact with people or whatever. There's window displays where people could send things to the library that you could put up in the windows, some kind of a pen pal program. And when we had the webinar before, there was a little bit of discussion about the pen pal program. There's lots of different ones, but I think we talked about the possibility of doing something like within libraries might be a really cool idea, so that you're not concerned about who your patrons might be connecting with, if they're connecting with those from another Vermont library. And then there are some cool ways that phones are being used at this point too. A lot of libraries have paid for these really expensive phone systems. So there are ways to really interesting ways to use those, like the dial-a-story. And there's lots of great resources around those where you're able to call in and pick a story that you'd like to hear. And it can have, change daily or weekly or whatever. And there's lots of resources around that. Of course, there could be quizzes and trivia, and then also just to be able to provide reference and support, to be able to offer, for people to call in who have, questions, which there are a lot right now because there's so many unknown things. And then also local radio. There's, to be able to connect with your local radio stations. This is an example from Homer Public Radio in Alaska, where they had a partnership with their local radio station, where they were actually doing story times on the local radio, which is really cool. And then the idea of doing partnering with local television. There is a link here for and in the PowerPoint for the Vermont Access, shows you where you can find your local station and how to reach out to them. And then, of course, the idea of working with newspapers and blogs to have them, newspaper share what the libraries are doing, any information around summer reading. And specifically, we know a lot of people are using Front Porch Forum to connect with their communities, and that's a really great resource. And then, there's summer learning home challenges, and we'll talk a bit more about similar things as we go forward, but, be able to basically physical things that you can get to patrons for them to use. So you can create kits, learning challenges, bingo sheets. And again, there are all sorts of resources. There's tons of resources for all of those types of. So along that line, so the curbside programming, a lot of libraries are already doing curbside pickup for books, for circulating books, and I know that there already are libraries that are also doing programming in that same way, that are sending home kits or like making kits available, craft kits and things like that. So there's lots of interesting things around that. And again, your library may not be doing curbside, and right now this may not be an option, and that's okay. But if it is, there's lots of great ideas around that. And there's a lot of them are very, very simple, which is, the I Spy windows, where you can actually use the physical library to put up, interactive displays. There's the idea of like basically a virtual parade, or sort of like a social distance parade. And there's lots of examples of that's happened around the country. Just window on chalk drawings, where similar kind of thing to the windows, take and make crafts, DIY zines and comics. And then there's been a lot of interest around story walks, which I will let Jennifer talk about a little bit.
Sure. So for those who don't know, story walks are basically deconstructing a picture book and placing pages a certain length apart along a path or a trail, and folks would walk along and read the story. It was actually created in Vermont by Ann Ferguson, who is affiliated with the Kellogg Hubbard Library. So a little while ago, we did a workshop with her about story walks, and that recording of that workshop is available. We will send that out. But the really exciting thing is that Joanne Allen from Enosburg Elementary School actually donated a collection of story walks she made, mostly with grant funds, to the Department of Libraries. So we have those here, and after working on the logistics a little bit, especially considering the state of the world right now, we're ready to start tentatively lending those out. We're doing sort of a pilot program right now. We're doing a few at a time. But if you are interested in checking out a story walk for your library, you can email me. My contact info is will be on the last slide at the end of the presentation, and we can work on getting your library set up with that.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and there's a lot of really simple ways to do those too, like especially if you're able to get like ARCs from publishers. That's a great way to use them, where some of them are already have just like the folded pages, or you can easily just like take them apart and use them, especially if you're getting free books to use for a story walk. Yeah.
The other thing I will say is that this is, hearkening back to our slide with making partnerships with other people in the community, a lot of libraries have partnered with the rec department or, you know, like a Green Mountain Club sort of group in their community to put them along trails and things like that. Folks have also put story pages, sort of like the I Spy windows, they have put story pages in the windows of businesses around town. So there are a lot of different options. Put them in parking lots so people can kind of drive and see the stories, because we do want to encourage people to continue to social distance and all that kind of stuff. So
Absolutely.
Lots of opportunities.
Yeah, thank you. And that sort of goes back to that, you know, the first point there of utilizing service areas, of like thinking about how you can work with partners, of, you know, whether it's a grocery store or whatever, or parks. But again, all of that, the big caveat for all of that is to first think about, you know, how that might happen, if there are safe ways to do that, as far as the social distancing and all of those aspects are concerned. So, okay, that's next one is, so incentives and prizes. So a lot of times that is built into summer reading. And again, I think there's an opportunity here to sort of rethink summer reading in general. Again, maybe simplify some pieces of it if it's a really complicated system for tracking and prizes and all of that. This might be a good chance to you know, think about it, to simplify it. But you know, there's a lot of other things you can do. You can extend the pickup time if people have earned rewards. You know, you can say that they can be picked up, you know, once the library does open. Or, you know, you could, if you're able to, you could do mail, or they could set up a system so that folks could pick up things. There also are a lot of digital badges, which is, you know, part of the platform that we will be offering. The reading platform, you know, has a lot of that built into it, as well as ways to like to interact with patrons who have like to set goals for them to like earn things, and then you can decide how and what those prizes are, or things like that. So community goals and incentives are a really great way too, where it's rather than just looking at individual goals and how much each individual is reading, to set like community goals for things. And then along with that, you know, you could raffles, where if you have some things that you can give away, rather than giving every single person a prize, that there, you know, if you have some things that you can raffle off, some cool things, that's a good approach as well. And then also, you know, thinking about e-gift cards, especially right now, to think about e-gift cards for local businesses, because it's they're so hard hit right now. So if there are ways to support our communities and our local businesses, then that would be really a great thing to you know, as a reward, as an incentive. And then of course also being able to contribute to charities as well, because there's so many people that are in need right now. And then thinking about community partnerships, which we have talked about, to, you know, you meet their patrons where they are. Metaphorically, of course, if we're, you know, depending on the of you know, when libraries are going to be open and things like that, you may not be able to interact with patrons in the same way that you have in the past. But again, to really think about community partnerships that already existing, or new partnerships, and you know, Jennifer was mentioning this earlier, but you know, things like food banks, meal programs, Parks and Rec, health department, and other essential services, you know, grocery stores and other things like that. Ways that not only to, you know, promote summer reading, but also to support what they are doing as well. So it's really always important, but even more important this year, to sort of think about how to use those partnerships and develop new ones. And along that lines, you know, school partnerships are always really important, especially around summer reading, to promote the summer reading and to come in to, usually at the end of school year, getting kids excited as they go home for the summer. But again, there's lots of challenges that teachers and schools are facing right now, but they are really connected to their students in ways that public libraries are not really able to do. So it's even more important than ever to connect with your schools and really work with them to see how you can best support what they are doing, but then be able to provide anything as far as summer reading goes, be able to support summer learning of the students throughout the summer. And so, of course, now is the time to connect before the summer comes along and the teachers get a much deserved break. Of course, school librarians are really important, a great in, and a lot of you already, if from public libraries, you may have a relation with the school librarians, and they have a really great way to to connect with the schools as a whole. And then, of course, as this isn't just with school partnerships, but in general, to share the tools and resources. A lot of, as a library, you may have some resources that the schools don't have access to, and vice versa. So to really share those resources with teachers, and teachers sharing with librarians, and students, and all of that, to be able to really pool our resources is really important. And again, as things look different, it's actually more important than ever to really keep records of what you are doing, because libraries are doing really amazing things right now, and it's different than the roles that we are used to. Libraries are used to being a place of refuge, physical place of refuge when things are rough, and that's not what this situation. That's not the role of libraries for the situation, but it's really important to show what you are doing, to keep track of, if you're doing virtual programs, if you're giving out materials, how you're being involved in these community partnerships we're talking about, how you're being involved in delivering meals or in any other things that are happening in the community, to really keep of all of that for stakeholders to be able to show this is what we did during this time. Is really important, and we know that the actual numbers of like programs and things like that are going to look very different than they have in years past. But that is totally fine, but it is not a reason to not keep track of what you are doing.
Hey, I want to oh, there's the slide right there. I forgot about that. I forgot we had a slide for this. Yep. So reporting for this year, as Jonathan said, is going to look different. You may, your immediate instinct may be, well, maybe I'm not going to do as much programming, so I don't have to keep track of anything or of as much stuff. But like Jonathan said, really keep track of everything you do during the summer, even if it's not necessarily having to do with your typical summer reading program, because anything you do to help your community is important, even if it doesn't necessarily under the umbrella of summer time, when kids are out of school and everything like that, that showing evidence of anything helpful that you've done is really important. Along those lines, summer reading statistics are usually due at the end of September. This year, summer has kind of been pushed back 2 months, because we're hoping that maybe people will be able to do some in-person programming as we get into the fall. But even if we don't, just giving people more time during this crazy part of life is really helpful. The usual survey is, of course, going to look different this year, reflecting the difference of how the summer is going to look. So we are we're working on that, and we will, once we have sort of a preview of that survey, we will send it out. But in the meantime, as you're thinking about preparing for that, just really keep track of everything. Even if, you know, it's not exactly easy to keep track of virtual attendance and things like that, just do your best. You know, we're not going to fact check you and come knocking on your door about, did you have 5 people or 10 people? We're not going to do that. So just do the best you can. I recommend using, you know, an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Doc or something like that. Just jot something down every time you're at the library, and, you know, we'll go from there. It will be great. It is important to remember that a lot of our summer reading materials and resources that we offer to libraries are funded by our Library Service and Technology Act money from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And every year we submit a report to them about how that money was spent. So of course they don't expect things to look the same this year as they have in previous years, but you know, being able to show evidence to them that you know, our libraries were using funds in a constructive way, even if it's not the normal way, is really important. So we really appreciate all of that as we go forward. And then finally, you know, there's a whole separate webinar about the performer grant, so I'm not going to really talk about that much, but folks who have accepted a performer grant for this summer will have to do a reporting document, and that has also been pushed back to be due by November 15th. And we are still working on that to, you know, we have also been struggling to think about how to count virtual attendance and things like that, since that is an option this year for this grant. So we are working on that form, and that will be sent out when it is ready. But we are really looking forward to seeing what performances happen this summer. And we will be asking folks who host a virtual performance to share that with us so we can share the link with everybody around the state, so you might get even more folks showing up for that. So
absolutely, that is one of the benefits of virtual programming in general, and is that you might, you know, be able to widen your audience and get people who may not normally attend programs. So that is, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so we have some updates from the mother organization, the Collaborative Summer Library Program. For folks who don't know, the Department of Libraries is a member of the Collaborative Summer Library Program, which is a national organization that creates summer reading programs with input from folks, of course, all over. And because the Department of Libraries is a member, all of our public libraries are also members. So usually from CSLP, we offer libraries their manual that they, and we have still done that. You can find instructions on how to access that on our website. And we also offer some incentive materials to libraries like reading logs and things like that. Some folks have already gotten them, and on the other hand, some orders have been delayed because of the pandemic. So hopefully I'll get those soon. That second bullet, the orders on hold, you'll just have to contact CSLP, kind of see what the status is, and you can even change your shipping address. So maybe it goes to, you know, somebody's house rather than the library to get a little bit quicker. But in thinking of the pandemic, a task force was put together to think of additional resources considering everything going on, and a link to that, to instructions on how to access those, is also on our website. Just some additional activities that can be done, you know, downloaded, rather than things you might necessarily have to do at the library at like an actual in-person program.
Yeah, and they sort of culled through and pulled out activities, because usually the CSLP is geared towards, you know, librarians, people who are doing the programs, who are planning them, but they pulled out activities that can be given, basically things that can be given directly to participants for them to use. Yeah,
you know, coloring pages, activity sheets, all things like that. Yeah. So they just want to make people's work a little bit easier this summer, which is good. The other thing we wanted to mention is that every summer, CSLP works with somebody to be the summer reading champion. And this year, that spokesperson is an author named Carmen Agradidi. And our Vermont librarians may recognize that name because her book, The Rooster Who Would Not Be Quiet, was recently a Red Clover nominee. So she is a consummate professional. She'll be doing story times on her Facebook, and there is also a video of her on the CSLP website, I believe. So that's an easy, quick programming idea. One story time, do a Carmen Agradidi book, and point folks to her Facebook page to see her read books. And so there are some podcasts to pair with this summer theme, which is Imagine Your Story. And we want to point out that this is one of the broadest themes that we've had.
Yes, that is true.
In many summers. So, while you see the artwork, it's, fairy tales and folk tales and things like that. Imagine Your Story could be literally any story. It could be your story, your grandparents' story, Rosa Parks' story. It could
Absolutely.
be anything, any sort of life experience lived can be a story. So really anything goes with this. Encourage people to tell their own stories, encourage them to listen to other stories, maybe even folks who are a little bit different from them. And you'll be golden. It's really easy to stay within the theme this year. But I'll let Jonathan talk about the podcast a little bit.
Yeah, so the CSLP, they just have a list of podcasts to pair with it. And the only thing I would say is that my initial reaction was like, oh, podcast for kids, I'm not sure. But I saw something recently that said that young people, kids and teens are the largest growing listeners of podcasts. So I think it is a one more tool that can be used to engage readers.
The other thing I really like about podcasts is that it can be done while doing other things.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you're on a family walk or something like that, and maybe you've been in quarantine too long and you've ran out of things to talk about, get those AirPods in and listen to a podcast and go out for a walk, get your exercise in and some learning in at the same time. So anything where you can, we don't do kill two birds with one stone anymore. I can't remember the nonviolent alternative for that, but anytime we can do that, that's really good.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, so we are really excited, of course, to hear your ideas and resources. Mm-hmm. So one way to share those with us is the VTLIB listserv. And this acronym is very old. I think it stands for Vermont Youth Advisory Council.
I didn't even know what it stood for.
Yeah, I'm not, but at this point, while our Youth Advisory Council is sort of on hiatus, it is the Youth Services listserv. And it's a great place to share ideas, ask questions of other librarians. If you haven't signed up for that, please do. All you have to do is email our IT consultant, Josh, and say, I would like to be signed up for VTLIB, and he will do that for you. And then once you're signed up, you can just compose an email to this address on the screen, put a subject and your message in the body and send it off, and everybody will see it and can reply to you. The other thing that we've created that's sort of at the bare bones stage right now is a Google Drive where folks can post ideas that they've done or that they've seen. And also it can be a resource of resources. So post websites when you've been finding really good ideas and things like that. So we will also, it's hyperlinked on the slide right here, but we'll also share out that link so that folks can start adding to that. And if anybody has any other ideas about how to, collect ideas or things like that, please let us know. We love to hear them.
Yeah, there's so many amazing ideas and so many amazing things that are happening And it's great to be able to share them out on the listservs, but sometimes they get lost in the haze. So if any way to sort of be able to make them accessible and to everybody is great. So yeah, please contribute to these. See what you were doing.
Yeah. So earlier in the pandemic, we started doing virtual library meetups. So they're an hour every Friday, and librarians can get together and just talk about really anything that's pertinent at the time, get feedback from not only VTLIB staff, but from other librarians. We've now started doing youth services meetups at that same time. So going back and forth between a more general meetup and youth services meetup. So, you know, we're recording this on May 14th. We have a youth services meetup tomorrow on May 15th, and then one on the 29th. And then we will evaluate the need for those moving forward. But you can always keep up to date with those meetups on our CE page on our website, and access information will always be posted. You can register, but you don't have to. You can just show up at the time and we'll be happy to have you.
Yeah, and they're really, it's a great opportunity to just connect and share resources. And, you know, we try to like ask a few questions, but they're pretty informal, and really are, if you show up and want to be a part of the conversation, you know, we can sort of, they can become, you know, go in the direction of whoever the participants are for that week. So it's a really great way to be able to connect and share ideas.
Yeah. Just another thing we wanted to touch on, sort of in that vein of things we are offering to folks during this time. We have a general COVID-19 resource page on our website. And if you go to this libraries.vermont.gov/COVID-19 link, you'll see a general page. But if you look on the side, you'll see other more specific web pages on the left-hand side of the screen in a menu that has our curbside guidelines, other online resources, programming ideas. It will link you to those virtual story times I mentioned earlier. So definitely check that out. And of course, always check out our youth services page. What is linked on the slide is our general page that will take you to wherever you want to go, whether it's our summer reading page or book awards or things like that. So we add to that as much as we can. Always keep up with our continuing education offerings. We are kind of, you know, we're really focusing on these meetups right now, and I have a webinar at the beginning of June, but we still are adding those all the time. If there is a topic that you are interested in seeing for a CE offering, please let us know, and we will work with Joy Warland, our CE consultant, to maybe, you know, see what we can do. We want to know what you want to know. So absolutely. We want to, you know, serve you in that way. And we also, of course, are always sharing webinars that other state libraries and library organizations are doing. You can find those on our website as well. They're all linked. There's so many of them are free. And, you know, people are really being thoughtful now of having really robust webinars because everything is virtual. So I encourage you to check those out.
Yeah, and that was really the reason why we had this summer reading webinar, was because people were asking us if there was going to be something like this and an opportunity to talk through, you know, summer reading in light of everything going on. So that's, you know, why we offered this. So and please, for those let us know.
And for those who attended the workshops in February, before all of this happened, you know, the information that was discussed at those is still on our website, and you know, can still use some of, a lot of it actually, even though you might not be meeting in person. So definitely check out the summer reading page on our website.
Definitely.
And then the last thing I just want to mention, you know, these are available to your patrons, but they're also available to you. Our we provide access to Universal Class and Learning Express, which are online learning platforms. All you need is your library card. Universal Class offers courses in literally everything, computer skills to soap making to wedding planning, like almost anything you could want to learn. There are classes for it. You move through modules like you would in a regular online course, but there is an actual instructor who will give feedback to you and who you can email if you want to. Learning Express is similar in format, except it focuses more on career exploration, test prep, resume building, all of that kind of stuff, more of those hard and fast prep skills. But it's still an awesome resource. And then, of course, Vermont Online Library is our big database of databases that patrons can use for research or just for browsing to learn. And that is, don't need a library card for it. If you are in Vermont, you can visit the link and it will know you're in Vermont and it will give you access to it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So many great resources.
So many. Yeah. So I'll let Jonathan finish up, but I just want to say thank you so much for coming today. If you have any questions about story walks or things like that, my email is jennifer.johnson@vermont.gov, and I look forward to hearing from you. And don't forget to sign up for VTLIB.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, also if for CE credit, for watching this video, just email me, and we will I'll coordinate with Joy Warland, and we'll figure out to give you credit for this. And any questions around summer reading or anything else, please feel free to reach out to me or Jennifer. We are here to help you. And thank you so much for joining us. And we will talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks.